I'm going to tell you a story. Actually, this is a story I wanted to tell in email when I was asked the question, what's happening with movements now? And I'm thinking about this very much in the context of where I am in Malaysia and what's happening in Malaysia currently. So it's not really a story about my work and the field that I'm normally within, but I want to figure something out, and I hope that I can figure it out with you together. So the first slide is fishers. For the longest time, we had a prime minister who was prime minister of the country for about 22 years. And in the process, he really controlled what is a public space. He controlled information that could go through. He controlled the media very strictly through various laws. He controlled public assembly, so more than 2 people in a space together can be considered an illegal assembly if you don't have a permit. So that's the kind of constraints. So, and we had laws like the Sedition Act, the Internal Security Act, a whole bunch of laws that really essentially created this kind of super surveillance society. You know, there is this huge panopticon and we are all watching each other and we are very careful in terms of what we say and what we do. But we also are quite cynical. Like, we know that we're not getting the full picture and there is more out there that needs to be had. But even though he was this kind of a very heavy-handed prime minister, but he was also seen as this benign patriarch who led us towards this path towards economic development. And he was quite a visionary in that sense. He really did build up the nation in that sort of like through that economic lens. And one of the things that he did was he really saw the potential of information and communications technologies as this bright golden path towards an economic development future. But what to do with this reputation of Malaysia being this heavily policed state? How are you going to be able to get investments from, oh crap, investments from, you know, from international companies to say that, you know, come and invest in Malaysia, we have this super multimedia corridor, but there's huge censorship. So he did this thing, which is to say that nothing in the Communications and Multimedia Act is to be construed as censorship of the internet. And this was in 1989. It was really quite visionary in that time. There's not many laws even around ICTs, so that's what he did. So from this state of complete lack of free flow of information to this openness, we had these fishers. Suddenly there was a lot of small little birds that was giving up information about corruption. Videotapes were being, you know, there were like videos of lawyers talking to each other and cobbling all these deals and stuff. So suddenly eyes were opened. And there was like this different multiple streams of alternative news. And we would get, you know, we would get very excited. We were euphoric. We were like consuming information and talking like we've never talked before. And we completely occupied this digital space as this new kind of like a public sphere where we really could engage and could get what was truth. And what happened was that in 2008, we had a tsunami. We had basically this kind of like a political tsunami. The ruling coalition lost by a huge margin for the first time ever since our independence. And not only that, people actually took to the streets. So after the 2008 tsunami, and we were like, we didn't believe that we couldn't have won, that the opposition party didn't, you know, how is it possible that there was this huge popular opinion and it didn't win? So then people took to the streets. I'm sorry. So in the previous slide, if you saw, there was a woman, and she's like Auntie Anne, and she was kind of like, she became this face of the demonstration. It wasn't about young people. It wasn't about youth. It was about the ordinary auntie, you know, who would go there and be tear gassed like hell, but still you would go there because it's worth it, because it's our nation, and this is what we're doing. So we just had our recent general elections, like in May, and I completely bought into this. You know, this momentum that I think this is it. I think this is the time. Really, for now, we might be able to see a change in government. And all of the corruption that actually sediments through structures and through people just not moving can maybe have a chance to just get a fresh start and change. And I really believed it. Places I went to the bank, you know, and then the clerks would tell me, so are you, you know, are you going to vote this weekend? I'm like, yeah. So are you still a bit skeptical? They say, yeah, of course, you know, because this is the time for change. And then we look at each other and we're like, yeah, let's go. And then, you know, on the day of the elections, and I was sitting in the polling station, and I was just watching the numbers come in. And it was starting to dawn on me that, oh my God, what the hell? It's not going to happen. It really isn't going to happen. And I remembered feeling so bewildered, like, how? How is this even possible when we all mobilized so strongly? You know, we really tried to, we signed up, we got indelible ink, we went and became polling agents, we started to be very vigilant, we worked as a whole community to make sure that the elections could be as clean as possible. How did that not happen? And then I realized, and you know, in fact, the the leader of the opposition party, Anwar, he even tweeted and said, Pakatan Rakyat has won. We urge UMNO and the Elections Commission to not attempt to hijack the results. So there was this whole kind of like, sense of like, we've won, of course we've won. And if we didn't win, it's fraud. It's not going to happen. Because there was actually a lot of fraud, but I don't think that there was enough fraud for what happened in terms of like how I felt, I was, of course there's fraud. Yes, we knew it, we tried to address it, but what happened? And I realized what happened was that I went from one bubble to another. I really did. And that was the moment that hit me. Social media really traps you in a bubble. It traps you in the bubble of people who think like you, talk like you, exchange information just like you. They curate it, they refine it, and then you circulate it amongst yourselves. So I really existed in this bubble. I know physically I was in a bubble where I went from one political campaign to another, and it was like a geographical constraint, but I thought digitally I would escape this constraint. But I didn't, because I really went into it in terms of being on Facebook, being in this social media bubble. So we didn't win. The change that I thought would happen, that transformation, didn't happen. But what did happen is, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there is a kind of like, already there was a sense of discomfort with a two-political party system. Like it's either between the devil and the deep blue sea. Is this the only thing that I can choose? No? So a lot of kind of like different activism movements started popping out and started claiming the word of Merdeka, which is independence. Like, Dinding Merdeka. So this is the Independence Park that got that's being taken over by a huge development project. And the mushroom was a big concrete mushroom that stood as the symbol of the park, If you look at photos in the 60s and 70s, there's always people standing by the mushroom taking picture. So they're like, where is the mushroom? We want our park back. So there's this whole movement around the mushroom park. The sexuality Merdeka says like, how can we claim independence and citizenship if we don't have our sexual rights? And it was like a public movement. Then there is like seed bombing and guerrilla action in public spaces like bus stops and taking it over and saying like, these are transitionary spaces. The city council isn't going to do anything about it, but we can. So they took recycled products and upscaled it. And, and started to claim spaces, claim terms, claim citizenship, but kind of like in pockets and in disparate ways. But then here we are today, right now, where there is, of course, a little bit of a backlash, right? The 2008 tsunami was completely attributed towards digital media, so there is attempts to control it. And then there's all of this momentum of citizen action and skepticism towards the state. There is definitely a trust deficit about the state being able to solve our problems. We will take it into our own hands a little bit. But things are starting to be quite uncomfortable. So this is Sexuality Merdeka. It got quite severely banned in 2011, and we recently just got the appeal rejected. So it got under Police Act. Basically, we tried to get like a workshop going, and then they said this is incitement of hate, and it got under Police Act. But also because the leader of the Bersih, the massive protest, opened Sexuality Merdeka. It was a movement, Merdeka. So it was actually a moment of alliance building, but then now it's become a moment of alliance blaming. And what do we do with this? Because now and there's always this hierarchy, bigger picture. Where do we go? How do we draw this line? And how do we sort of like contest it? And that's it. Thank you. Sorry for going so long.